Attention, please. The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Hey everybody, welcome to our View from the Couch Sports Podcast. This is Rob LaBenne with your co-host Ron Frazier. Ronnie, what's going on today, man?
Oh, loving life, man. Loving life.
Me too. Hey, big game Monday night, national championship game. We had Michigan and Washington, and Jim Harbaugh and the boys from up north get it done with just a big performance over Washington. They right from the get-go out of the gate, they were running the football and putting up points, and Washington just never was in the football game at all. And, you know, Ron, it's hard to believe that I was just looking at this morning. Jim Harbaugh, between being a player and a coach, has spent 38 years in football, and this is his first title ever. He's coached 4 years in the NFL. Of course, he went to the Super Bowl against his brother there when he was in San Francisco when they played Baltimore, lost that game. He spent seasons as an NFL quarterback, never won a championship, and all this time at Michigan. And this is his first title in 38 years in football. And if it is his last game at Michigan, it's a good way to go out.
Exactly. Well, good for him. That's awesome. And they pretty much had it in hand the whole time, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was right from the get-go. Corum and Edwards they just took it right to that Washington defense, and they the tackling wasn't there, the scheme wasn't there. I don't think Washington was accustomed to playing that type of football on that type of stage. I mean, there's no secret that the Pac-12 plays a different brand of football than what the Big Ten does on a week in and week out basis. But boy, if that's a precursor to what we're going to see next year with Washington and Oregon and USC and those guys coming into the Big Ten, then I think the Pac-12's got some adjustments to make in their philosophy, because if they think they're going to come in and play the way they did in that game, it's going to be a long season for those football teams. I thought the Big Ten did a great job, and we'll see what happens. But I think the Pac-12 is going to get a little bit of awakening that you got to play defense if you're going to compete in the Big Ten. It's not going to be a shoot 'em out. They just don't play that way there.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, it's funny how just last week we were talking about Harbaugh could be his last week or his last year or here at Michigan. You know, that's looking like he could go to the pros. It's also looking like they're that transfer portal that we always talk about. They're 4-star wide receiver. They won the game, and it was no sooner over. He went in the I've never heard of somebody from a championship game leaving going into the transfer portal. That's
right. Yeah, and who knows? Is that a precursor that he knows something that we don't? That Harbaugh's gonna leave there, or what it's gonna be? And I mean, we've seen this just this morning and earlier in the week with Alabama, who they lost with Saban announcing his retirement. They lost a 5-star wide receiver recruit who decommitted. And then earlier in the week, one of their big quarterback recruits, who was a top 10 recruit in the nation, Eli Holstein, who's a freshman quarterback, he entered the transfer portal, and he made his way to Pitt. So that's a big pickup for the Panthers. Instead of them, like the last couple of years, they've been going out and getting guys that got 1-year eligibility, bringing them in. This guy's got 4 years left of eligibility, and he's a 5-star guy. So, of course, Pitt struggled at quarterback last year with Yarnell, and Velo is his name. So we'll see if he can come in and compete for a job, give Pitt a little stability at quarterback. So Alabama's got some guys leaving there with some Saban leaving. So the coach does make a difference. And there's two. If Harbaugh does leave, there's two pretty big shoes to fill in Saban and Harbaugh. There's no doubt.
Saban, that just knocked my socks off. I thought
it definitely knocked mine off, Ron. Like we were talking about at the top before we came on. I not once did I hear from anybody that was even on the horizon that Saban was leaving. So I think it maybe took a lot of people by surprise. And I mean, they've had a good thing going in Alabama for the last, I think it's 17 years he's been there. So I read a thing this morning before I came on that every senior class that he's had since he's been there has at least one national title. That's amazing. That's the thing. Yeah, that's a crazy stat. I don't know if you could find any coach that could make that brag that they've had at least every one of their senior classes with a national title. So that's a crazy stat right there.
That is. But yeah, that one totally surprised me. I didn't expect him. Harbaugh, I kind of expected. There was rumblings about that, but Saban, that just come out of nowhere. It was like, you're out.
Yeah.
Well, he's walking away, but anybody that's coached a long time, it's not just a 40-hour. It's 7 days a week. Even if you're high school, it's always on your mind. You're coaching. You're like, how can I improve this? I'm doing it. It's a 24/7 commitment. And I mean, after 17 years or 20 years.
We just started preseason baseball workouts last night, and it's the second week of January. And from now until the end of probably July, middle of August, that's going to be my life is going to be baseball. So I mean, and I'm not even close to on the level of what these dudes are between recruiting and all this stuff that they got going on. It's a lot more than people think, just showing up on Saturday or Sunday. And I mean, these guys earn their money and they get paid well for it, but they earn it.
Yeah.
No.
Definitely. We're on the college thing and coaching. Hines Ward, I don't know if you heard about this, Texas Southern. I mean, it's not a blow out your window kind of a place, but Texas Southern's very interested in him being the head coach.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I mean, you got to start somewhere. Look at Deion Sanders. I mean, he started out at a little traditionally black college and had success there, and then moved up to Colorado. And so I know Hines he's been around a while, wide receivers coach, some at a few different places and stuff like that. So it's a stepping stone. I could see a guy like Hines Ward being successful as a coach, and best of luck to him. That's great.
Yeah, he was coaching in that XFL league,
Mm-hmm.
I believe, for a year, and that's another thing. They're combining that. We didn't even talk about that. They're combining them two leagues, XFL, and it's going to be, what is it, USFL?
No, it's God, I just saw a commercial for that the other night. No, it's not the USFL. It's boy, I can't remember what it was wrong.
Well,
I haven't been paying that much. I've seen the commercials, but that time of the year I'm in baseball mode, so I haven't paid much attention to spring football. So
well, let's talk about some of these teams. I mean, we'll get into the playoffs, but before we get into the teams that actually made it, talk about teams that disappointing season and total collapse. Some of them are even in the playoffs, but I don't know, man. My opinion is Jacksonville, the Jaguars. I mean, all the hype talk that was before preseason, and they were playing phenomenal, and they had everything in place. And to collapse, they were 8-3 at one time.
Yep.
And
they were the 1 seed at one point. They were the best team in the AFC at I think about the midway point of the season. Jacksonville was the 1 seed.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. It was a big collapse by them. And Lawrence suffered through some injuries that hurt him a little bit. They fired their defensive coordinator, I saw here, I think a couple days ago, which was a sticking point. I think Peterson's a good coach. I think the offense will be fine. I think they do need to rework their defense a little bit, but they did a really poor job tackling against Tennessee. I mean, not that Derrick Henry's an easy guy to bring down, but between him and Spears, the other running back, they had a day against Jacksonville on Sunday. Thank God they did. I mean, that helped us out huge getting into the playoffs. But yeah, Jacksonville really tanked down the stretch.
And the Eagles, 10-1, and what a skid.
Yeah.
What a skid. They look scary bad.
Yeah, and there's another team that I don't think we really ever heard how really banged up Hurts is. I don't think he's 100%. I don't think he has been 100%. But I think their last win might have been the squeaker against Dallas at home, and then after that they went into a tailspin. It's like that game took everything out of them, and they were a whole different football game or a whole different football team down the stretch. Now, luckily for them, yeah, they get to go on the road to Tampa, but Tampa they shouldn't scare anybody offensive wise. I mean, they beat Carolina 9-0 or something like that on Sunday. They're not going to put up a lot of points. I do think Philadelphia squeaks into the semifinal round. What they do from there, it's hard to tell what team's going to show up though, Ron. It really does.
Total shocker. I mean, it's one thing to be the Jets and your season almost ends on the second play of the game. That's one thing, but to have things in your hands like the Eagles had their destiny like really there, and to lose like you said in it, bad tailspin. Yep. They can't get nothing going.
No. And then there's other teams that, in my opinion, there's three teams that you can really. We talked about the Jets at the top of or before we came on. I mean, they so much optimism going into the season with Rodgers, and then on the second play, like you were talking to me about, he goes down, and it's like their season went out the window after 10 minutes. They never fully recovered. Zach Wilson never got it done. The defense was great. They had a playoff caliber defense, but they just couldn't score points, and it cost them. One team another team that fired their coach this week, who to me is underperformed for the last 2 years, is the San Diego Chargers. There was another team that was should have been a playoff team the last couple of years. And to me, this is one of the most attractive job openings there is. You got your quarterback in place. You got a lot of skill players on offense. This is a team to me that they get the right guy pulling the trigger at head coach. They can go right into being a playoff team real quick. So if you get guys like Harbaugh and Belichick in that, this is a team that's ready to win right now. So that's a team. But another team I'm going to throw out there, and this is one's not going to get mentioned a lot, is the New Orleans Saints. I thought in my heart the Saints should have ran away with that NFC South, and they put up a huge game on Sunday against Atlanta. But the games in the middle of the season that they lost were just ridiculous. And I thought with putting Carr in place and the receivers they have and Kamara, they still are the best team in the AFC South. They just came up short in games earlier in the season, and so now Tampa's in the playoffs and they're sitting at home. So to me, New Orleans was a little bit disappointing this year too. I actually, at the beginning of the season, I saw that team as a team that could have made a little bit of a run at a Super Bowl. I really did. And they kind of shit the bed a little bit too. So
that was kind of a pretty cheap thing they did at the end of that game, man, when they lined up in that victory and then handed the ball off to Jamal.
Yeah. And if Dennis Allen is telling the truth that he called the victory formation and then Jameis Winston changed it at the line of scrimmage to get that guy a touchdown, then that's on Jameis Winston. And I heard a couple guys this week saying that, I think it was Shannon Sharp was pretty emphatic that Winston needs to be cut. And I don't disagree with it. I mean, we've all been in that situation. And what comes around goes around. Eventually, New Orleans is going to pay for what they did. Atlanta gets to play them twice next year. And I mean, they'll eventually get payback on that. So you always gotta. I know as a coach, I'm always watching what goes on, and you never want to be that guy that runs up a score because eventually you're going to get it right back on you because those mental notes are taken and things have a way evening themselves out. So
Yeah,
that
I
was a
don't.
poor decision on Winston's part.
Yeah, definitely loss of integrity right there.
Yeah,
You just don't do that kind of stuff. You got the game in hand. It's not like a role like Rudy in the movie where college kid's been there for 5 years and you're going to get him in for a play. Now Jamal is a professional. He's getting paid to sit, to not get a touchdown, whatever. You
right.
know what I mean?
Yeah, and like a lot of guys said in that situation that if you want to get the guy a touchdown, that's fine, but line up like you're going to run a play. Don't line up in victory and then hand the ball off. I mean, we're professionals. If we have to line up and play defense, we'll line up and play defense. But don't trick us by going into victory and then handing the ball off and running a live play. And I mean, this is a lot of these guys. This is their livelihood. I mean, you can't go out and get hurt because you relaxed on a play that you thought was over, and then all of a sudden you're getting hammered on a rush that you weren't ready for. And I mean, that's the other part of this. Yeah, it was a bad look running up the score, but on the other hand, somebody could have got hurt there. I mean, you're not ready for a hit, or you get rolled up on the wrong way because you relaxed, and now you're out for 10 months for an ACL. I mean, a lot of bad things could have happened there, and I don't think they truly thought that through. And shame on if those players did that on their own. Shame on them. That was poor taste right there.
Yeah. But the quarterback's the leader on the field,
Yep.
and shit falls downhill. And he's the one and I kind of agree with Shannon Sharp. If you lose your troops, control your troops, man.
Yep.
It's over. Uh, One thing about the Jags, I'm going to throw this back at them. I think it was the Myron Cope terrible towel curse, man.
Yeah. How awesome was that? Yeah. I watched those videos and those comments on what the heck was that guy's name from Jacksonville? He had to pick against us, and then he went over to the stands and he pulled the terrible towel out and was waving it around. First thing I did when I saw the first video for that is I went to his Twitter feed and I was reading the comments from all the Steeler fans, and I mean, the dude was a good sport about it. He just he posts after the comments. He just goes, "Well played, Yinzers. Well played," and it was pretty cool. So yeah.
Well, hey, before we start talking a little bit about the Pittsburgh game, the Steelers game, the last Steelers games with Baltimore, I want to throw you some stats out here, some Mason Rudolph stats. 3 games. The 3 games, he has no less than 112.2 quarterback rating. Uh, Quarterbacks with 60-yard touchdowns, 60 yards or longer touchdowns. He has 3. Tua is the only person that has more in a whole season. He has 4.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's 10 other quarterbacks that are tied with 2.
Ooh.
Okay. Now, completion rate. Here's something. With 70 or more passes. Number 1, Mason Rudolph, 74.3%.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 2, Jake Browning, Cincinnati, 70.4. Dak Prescott, 69.5. Kirk Cousins, 69.4. Brock Purdy, 69.4. Tua, 69.3. Derek Carr, 68.4. And Nick Mullins, 67.6. They were pretty amazing stats right there.
Those are amazing stats, and I mean Mason's come on, and I mean he's benefited a little bit from just a superior running game the last 3 weeks. Uh, everybody that sat around and said Najee Harris is dead, he's not. He's alive and well, and he's pounding the football right now, and they need to ride that train. And he actually this time I've been saying this the last couple weeks. I can see him kind of distancing himself a little bit of separation between him and Warren. Warren didn't have a good game against Baltimore. He just never got it going. And Najee, went over 100 yards again. He broke the 1,000-yard mark for the third straight season, had another touchdown. I think he's going to be huge. But going back to Rudolph, boy, 18 to 20 against Baltimore on Sunday. He only had 154 yards, but it was sloppy. It was a day to run the football. I mean, Huntley didn't have a good day either throwing the football. Pittsburgh stopped for the most part, other than the big run that Gus Edwards had. They did a great job stopping them on the run and bottling that up. And so Pittsburgh played a good game against. Now everybody's going to say, "Well, Baltimore didn't have their starters in." That's fine. They're still professionals. They're there to play football. So a win's a win.
Another stat with Baltimore. The last 8 games Pittsburgh's played against Baltimore, their record is 7-1.
Yep.
I didn't realize it was that off. I knew we had the advantage, but I didn't think it was 7-1.
Yeah, and we went 5-1 in division this year against arguably the best division in football. We went 5-1. The only loss was the 13-10 game to Cleveland in the middle of the season. That, I mean, we could have won that game also. We just made some bad decisions there and didn't win that football game. So Pittsburgh's played fairly well. I mean, that little stretch there where we lost to New England and we lost to Arizona, that hurt. But for the most part, we've played fairly well. I don't think there's anything to really complain too much about. In my heart, I would have liked to seen if they would have pulled the trigger on Rudolph earlier. If he would have played the last half of the season, where we would have been at. We could have been playing for a division title if they would have made that switch a little bit earlier, but they didn't. So we're at where we're at, and we got a big game against Buffalo on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to look back, but I'm like you. I truly believe we had the capability of actually even running for the AFC. I mean, number 1 seed. I mean, it was there. It was there. If you go back and look at these, but we always play to the caliber of our team. That's for sure.
Yep. I mean, our 2 biggest turd games of the season were, of course, the opener against San Francisco, which, not to bring it up again, but I think they're the best team in the football right now. So that there's really nothing to be ashamed of there. And then probably to me the most disappointing game of the season was what they did when they went to Houston against Stroud and got taken apart in that football game. And not that Houston's not good. I think they are a good football team, but to get beat up by a rookie quarterback like that against that defense was a little embarrassing. So to me, those 2 games stand out as really the 2 biggest beatings we took all season. But and there was some games in there that we should have won and could have won that we didn't. But 10-7 is nothing to sneeze at. I mean, we went to the Super Bowl from the last seed before, so it's possible. We just we got to go out and play.
Yeah, definitely. We talked about this before we went on. A couple extra surprises. We got some guys coming back from injuries that'll be on the field. That'll help, especially with losing TJ. But Eric Rahl, man, safety. Wow. 29 tackles, interception, 2 passes defensed in 3 games.
Yeah, he's been phenomenal. Him and Miles Jack and a lot of these guys that weren't really even playing football a month ago are now stepping up, and they're becoming integral parts of this defense because of injuries. I mean, we lost a couple inside linebackers earlier in the season, and then out of necessity, we've had to bring back guys like Jack and Rose, a 7-year veteran who's got experience, and he's played phenomenal the last 2 weeks. He, like you talked about before, he had an interception. He's just played great with Minka being out. Now, I think we get Minka back this week. So with him and Rowe,
Casey's back.
Casey's back. So we're getting that secondary back at the right time. It's just unfortunate we're not going to have TJ Watt on Sunday at 1:00. But I mean, it's like they always talk about. It's next man up, and between Herbig and a couple of these other guys, somebody's got to step up, and it's going to be crucial that they get some kind of pressure on Allen, and not only get pressure, but somehow contain him, because he can beat you with his legs just as quick as he can beat you with his arm. There's no doubt about it. Now, Baltimore or Buffalo is going to be hopefully without Gabe Davis. I don't know if he's playing or not. I think he's going to be closer to a game time. So that's a big playmaker that has hurt the Steelers in the past. So that leaves you with Diggs, Kincaid, and Rashid, and still a pretty talented trio of receivers for Buffalo that secondary is going to have their hands full with. But Porter's going to have a big game against Diggs. There's no doubt.
Yeah, like you and I talked a little bit before. These playoff games, it's always like your guys, not your studs. It's always like your guys that come out and get their first touchdown of the year in the playoffs, or somebody not like maybe Shakir. I'm thinking Shakir has, if there's any passing going on, he'll probably have a shot.
Yep. And on the flip side of that, on the Pittsburgh side of the ball, I think a guy like Allen Robinson, I think a guy like Pat Freiermuth, who haven't necessarily been featured in that offense too much the last few weeks. Now Robinson, it seems like his targets are being he's had an uptick in targets. Rudolph missed him on a big play on Sunday against Baltimore, but it seems like Allen's getting more involved. And boy, if you can get a guy like Allen Robertson, the third guy, where he's opening up the middle of the field, him and Freiermuth, and it's just going to spell disaster for secondary when you got Pickens and Deontay one-on-one on the outside, and it could be a long day, especially if Pittsburgh if they can keep running the football the way they are with Harris and Warren. It's Pittsburgh could have some success, and they could put some points up against Buffalo. Buffalo haven't been lights out on defense this year. Well, Pittsburgh's not really been super lights out. They've made most of the opportunities when plays had to be made. Pittsburgh's given up a lot of yards, but Pittsburgh's defense has been very opportunistic with turnovers and getting stops when they needed them. So,
do they put a spy on Allen? Do they put a spy on Josh Allen? And if they do, who do they put on him?
Well, and that's where a guy like Fitzpatrick makes a huge difference coming back. I think he's a sure tackler. He's got some speed, especially if you can keep Rowe and Peterson in that secondary. I mean, Peterson's probably not fast enough anymore on the outside for a Diggs or a Rashid, but is he fast enough to stick with Kincaid? Sure. So do you stick him or Rowe on Kincaid and let Fitzpatrick spy, make plays? Basically, I mean, we could look back on Paul Mallow. He was the guy that was all over the field. Do you line him up in pass rush? Do you sneak him up in the middle? There's a lot of things you can do with Minkah Fitzpatrick, and especially if Rowe's going to play the way he is, and you got a veteran like Peterson who's maybe not as quick and fast as he used to be, but you can't tell him he's still not a smart football player. You don't lose that. And then you got Porter on the outside with Casey. So we'll see what Pittsburgh decides to do. I think if they can make Buffalo one-dimensional, I can't see Buffalo going out and running the ball down their throat. I don't think Buffalo's really designed to play football that way. But Pittsburgh's taken the run away from a lot of teams the last 6-7 weeks. So, boy, it's going to it's a fascinating game to me, Ron. It really is a fascinating game. It's you look at it and you think Buffalo is the superior team, but I can see a path where Pittsburgh wins this football game. I really can, because I think Buffalo, if they're not at the top of their game, they can be had, and they showed that all season long. I mean, they were in playoff mode for the last 7 weeks of the season. If they would have lost one game, they weren't going to be in the playoffs. So it's not like they came in. I mean, right now they're one of the hottest teams in the NFL, but boy, up until the last 7 weeks, they weren't. They were out of the playoff picture for most of the season.
I agree. I'll tell you who has a really nice path. It's Cleveland Browns.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't ask for a better playoff path than the Cleveland Browns. I mean, to go into Texas with that defense, like we discussed earlier, and then potentially play Baltimore, where Cleveland has already beat them on the road.
Yeah, that Cleveland defense is the real deal with Garrett, and I'm not so sure there's a better secondary in the NFL right now than what Cleveland's putting out on the field. And then you mix in a veteran like Joe Flacco, who doesn't make a lot of mistakes. I mean, he's thrown some picks since he's been there, but he's also been on target with a lot of throws, and you add the run game they have. Cleveland can make a deep run in this thing. I could see Cleveland making an AFC Championship appearance. I really could.
I do too. I definitely do. I would love it to see them in Pittsburgh. That would be
God, this part of the country would be unbelievable if Cleveland and Pittsburgh played an AFC Championship game. It would be like the old days again, back when we were kids, and it was actually a rivalry back then. It would be something else for that to happen.
Yeah. Well, it looks like they got the Bills favored by 10, and you can find anywhere from 10, 9.5. And the over-under, I'm seeing 36.5 points, Rob.
Yeah. I definitely like Pittsburgh plus the 10. I don't think this is going to be a blowout either way, especially if the weather does what I think it's going to do there. I think they're supposed to get maybe some snow or some rain. So I do see this going over 36.5. I think both teams are going to be close to 20 points in this one way or another. Mm-hmm. I think, Ronnie, the biggest key to me in this game is if and when the turnovers come, and I think Pittsburgh is going to get a chance, at least with 1 or 2 picks in this football game. They have to get points off those extra possessions, and if that happens, Pittsburgh is going to be in this football game. And Josh Allen, of course, as we know, it's been documented. He likes to take chances down the field. You just got to capitalize on those mistakes, and
right.
We'll see what happens.
Well, Bills Mafia will be there loud.
Oh, yeah. That place is going to be unbelievable on Sunday afternoon. There's no doubt about it.
They definitely will. Well, we have a guest fan coming on today, Rob.
Oh, okay. Great.
We got Bart Levier, old friend. He definitely, I'll tell you what, he's the man when it comes to knowing different things about what teams are coming up, who's going to get drafted. I mean, every year I go to him like, who's drafting who? And it is, let's see if we can bring him in here.
Hey, Bart.
Hey, Bart Levier. How you doing, buddy? We don't got no sound. We don't got no sound on you. Your volume's off.
Okay, you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you.
Hi, Bart.
Hey, howdy. Bob, I agree with you 100%. Number one, it'll be a tight end show. I think that whoever comes with the tight ends and uses them. And Allen is noted for his interceptions. Pittsburgh picks off 2 of those. Pittsburgh will beat them, hands down. It's supposed to be cold and windy. So you hit it right on the nose.
Thanks, Bart.
You're welcome.
You had a question for us today, Bart.
What's the deal with the coaches? I think they're getting rid of the old coaches and everybody's trying to get new coaches for like 3-year deals. And if they don't pan out in 2 years, they're history. I think New England's coach will be going. Pittsburgh coach will be going. And I say in 3 years, Kansas City's coach will be history. That's my belief. What do you think?
Well, I think the game changes. Sometimes new coaches are necessary. Some coaches cannot or not good with change. We've talked about this before. I mean, you go back, Chuck Noll, one of the best coaches ever. Pittsburgh should have got rid of him earlier in the 80s. He was a great coach, but the game changed. Okay, when it comes to that, Cowher was, they changed, and these coaches that are not using tight ends and the new rule sets, somebody's in there chirping in somebody's ear. It's like that game is 20 years ago. I don't think it has a lot to do with, well, but you are right though. A lot of these old coaches, Pete Carroll, he just dropped out. But what do you say, Rob?
Well, I think it comes down to, well, let's talk about Belichick first of all. Belichick's been there for 26 years. The last 4 years since Brady left haven't been that great. You can't say Bill Belichick without having Brady's name right next to it. They benefited from each other. There's no doubt about that. And you can't replace a guy like Tom Brady. As much as he's been a pain in our ass in Pittsburgh for the last how many years, you got to respect what they did up there. I mean, if it wasn't for Brady and Belichick, Steelers have at least one, if not two more Super Bowls. There's no doubt in my mind when I look back over the last 20 years that they were – you got to not like them from that standpoint, but you do have to respect what they did. Now, is it time for a change in New England? Yeah, I think it is. And obviously when Kraft and him met the last couple of days, they both kind of agreed that, all right, maybe it's time to move on and get some new blood in here and change what we're doing. The game does change. I mean, you talk about going from Noll to Cowher to Tomlin, and the games went from where you had running backs getting the ball 30 times a game to now it's your receivers are the focal part of your offense. Running backs are a dime a dozen for the most part. There's still teams. I mean, we're, of course, benefiting from the run right now more than we have in the last few years. But I think the offenses have changed, and I think these younger guys, like you take McDaniel, you take I can never remember the guy's name in the Rams, McVay, Shanahan, these younger guys that are coming out of these systems where they have these more complex offensive schemes. And I think these other teams see these old guys that are still clinging to this. They want this new exciting offense. They want this product on the field. And I think the fans want this on the field. And I think there's a lot of pressure for these teams to win right now. And I think that's why there's such a quickness to cut ties with a guy and move on to the next best thing every few years to, one, keep the fans happy and maybe find lightning in a bottle to where you're going from last to first in a shorter period of time. And sometimes it pans out, sometimes it doesn't. I don't think Tomlin's going anywhere. I think Tomlin will be back. I just can't see the Steelers firing a guy. We can bitch and moan all we want about Tomlin this and Tomlin that. He does a ton of things I hate, but he is 10-7 this year. We are a playoff team. Has he made some bad decisions and maybe not done what we wanted him to do? Absolutely. But I don't think Tomlin's going anywhere, and I think that's going to be a case where he's not going to go anywhere until he wants to go somewhere. I don't think the Rooneys are going to fire him. I just think he's going to be here as long as he wants to be. But there are jobs opening up, like me and Ron were talking about before the show. The San Diego job. There's a case where a guy like Staley underperformed on a team that should have been a playoff team the last 2 years. When you got a guy like Herbert, the set of receivers he has, Eckler, they just couldn't play enough defense, keep them in football games. And in a division that you could say was as down as it's been all year, between Kansas City not being what they were the last few years, Las Vegas not being good, Denver struggling for the first half, San Diego or Los Angeles Chargers had easy pickings. They could have won that division this year, but Staley just didn't get the job done. So there's an attractive job opening right there for somebody to step in, and that is a team that can go from last to first in a hurry, in my opinion, if they get the right guy in there.
They had a great defense. They had a great defense that just got tired.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I don't think you're going to this coaching carousel and this Bart. To answer your question, I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. I don't know if it has. I think it has something to do with age a little bit, but I mean, you got even younger guys that they're getting a couple years shot, and if it ain't there, they're moving on, and everybody's looking for stability. And we're pretty lucky in Pittsburgh. I got to be honest with you. I'm going to be 53 on Monday, and since I've been alive, I've only had 3 head coaches. I've had Knoll, Cowher, and Tomlin. I can name them all on one hand. You take other teams like the Browns and that. I would need an encyclopedia volume to list the kind of coaches they've had since I've been alive.
But here, what I think is like when Chuck Noll was there, it was the defense.
Sure.
Okay.
And it was that way with Cowher too. We ran the ball.
Yeah, but we ran the ball there. But now I think it's getting to be a big passing game. And I don't know, we got to go to the West Coast offense. We need somebody to want to throw the ball.
Yeah,
We don't have it.
I don't disagree with you, but I can tell you this: if it wasn't for our running game and our defense the last few weeks, we'd be in a world of hurt. They've carried us, so there's a lot to be said. I still think that there's a lot to be said for being able to run the football, but you still need to be able to throw it. And I think that we've had the ability to run the football all year long, but the last 3 weeks we've got a guy that's has the ability to stand in the pocket, get the ball downfield, make the right reads, not panic in the pocket. And this has been the difference is we've played complementary football with the run game and the pass game. And we didn't have that with Trubisky and not so much with Pickett. Pickett was a little bit happy in the pocket and he didn't let plays develop. And I don't think he made good reads. Now, does that come with age? Sure. He's been in the league a long time. And I think that's a skill you develop. There's not a lot of guys coming out of college that are really good at that. And I think that's something you develop. And I haven't given up on Pickett yet. I'm not far away from giving up on Pickett, but I haven't given up 100% on him yet. I've totally given up on Trubisky.
Hey, I say, beginning of the year, I wanted to get rid of Rudolph. Well, he made me open my eyes up because he's impressive.
He is impressive. And now whether or not he's back with Pittsburgh, I mean, like me and Ron talked about on a couple podcasts ago, the offseason is going to be crazy for Pittsburgh. Who knows what they do? They got some big decisions to make with Rudolph and Pickett, and I don't know what direction they're going to head. This game for Sunday though for Rudolph, to me is a make or breaker. If he goes out and wins a playoff game on the road in Buffalo, boy oh boy, your decision gets even harder for Pittsburgh on what you do with this guy.
Or how much money you want to pay for him.
How much money you want to pay him, or how much does somebody else want to pay him? Because
he's getting paid by somebody.
Yeah, I mean, especially if he wins a playoff game, there's going to be some teams going, well, geez, he went on the road to Buffalo, won a playoff game, and especially if he looks good doing it. I mean,
I gave you his numbers, guys. I give you the stats. His stats are top of the league. Top of the league for any quarterback. He's number one in completion percentage. He's got the second amount of over 60-yard touchdowns. But hey, back to the coaches thing real quick. To come back at you, Rob, with Tomlin, I agree with you that he's going to have to leave on his own accord. But, he's kind of locked. He's definitely locked up his Hall of Fame status. He's got more than enough money to live by. Actually, he can probably make just as much, if not more, going into announcing. He's very articulate. They would all want him. They would all want him.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree with you.
I mean, he's one of the most well-liked coaches. I mean, if he can go out and make 35 to 50 million announcing.
Yeah. Oh, he's definitely going to have he's going to have a living outside of the NFL as far as broadcasting and stuff goes. He's a dynamic personality. There is no doubt about that. And I I've caught myself getting down on Tomlin a lot this year, but I spent the last couple days reading what players have said about him over the last 3 weeks, getting this team ready for this run. And yeah, to the day I die, I'll argue with some of his game management decisions, but I'll never argue with him the way he motivates guys to play football and the things that he says to these guys to get them ready. I mean, he is definitely his players love him. There is no doubt about that. His players love him, and he can motivate a guy to go out and play football. And I'll never argue that point. Is he not sometimes a great game manager? No, he makes some dumb decisions sometimes, but boy,
I think he's too loyal to his coaches. Like for
well, there's
years,
no,
how many years we haven't had an offensive line?
yeah,
We need an offensive line coach.
yep. Well, and they're going to have to do something that, boy, the offensive coordinator thing's pretty interesting too, because if you look and see what Sullivan and Faulkner have done since they fired Canada, I mean, this offense looks, especially every week you see new wrinkles put into this thing that the motion, like Ron, I can remember Ron talking about this 7-8 weeks ago that we never, when Canada was there, we weren't running motion. Well, now we're bringing Austin on these jet sweeps where our blocking schemes are entirely different in the run game. Every week you see this offense evolving in a different direction than what it was 7 weeks ago. And I'm thinking to myself, do you stick with this tandem if they're going to keep moving in this direction and you give them an off season to put this offense in place? And I thought Sullivan's done a great job with the play calling for the most part. And Faulkner, I mean, you see him on the sideline up and down talking to guys, and
to do what they've done in 4 games, Rob and Bart, what they've done in 4 games is amazing. Nobody takes an offense in the middle of the season and can change it. You just can't. It's just not. What they've done is pretty amazing.
It is pretty amazing. It really is. And you get, I mean, I think we all know we got some pieces of the puzzle that we need to plug in there. But, geez, you go out and you can win a playoff game and get into the Final Four. And, I mean, I don't think the team's that far away. I mean, who knows? The NFL's weird, man. You just when you think you have it figured out, that AFC is wide open, dude.
Yeah.
It is wide open. Any one of those 7 teams can win that division or win that conference. There's no cut and dried favor in the AFC.
No.
Not one.
No.
I think mentorship would help out a lot, like the receivers. Like you had Johnson not picking how to handle himself. But the problem is, who did Johnson have to go after?
Yeah.
Brown.
Well,
But we need a receiver to know how to handle himself and teach these younger receivers. We got great receivers, but their mouths get ahead of their game.
yeah, right. We're missing a one. We need a big time receiver. I mean, I know Antonio Brown lost his mind and everything like that, but we haven't had a dude like that since Brown left, and he took a lot of pressure off guys that had big. Like, I mean, you look at the year Juju had, and some of these other guys when Brown was around, and you get a dude eating up double teams and opening up your tight end. To me, a big time wide receiver, and I don't get me wrong, I say this all the time. I love George Pickens. I think he's a really talented dude.
Yes.
But I see him as a solid 2 guy. I don't see him being able to take over a football game like a CeeDee Lamb, like a Justin Jefferson. Like, I just don't think he's on that level. Can he be on that level at some point? Maybe, but he benefits from another guy on the other side. And I'm not going to mix my feelings. I hate Deontay Johnson. He is a horrible wide receiver. He has his plays, but I'll give you an example. In the Baltimore game the other day, he had an opportunity to pick up a first down, and he just totally laid down and didn't fight for that extra 2 yards. And he's done that his whole career. And his hands haven't ever been that great. He's afraid of contact. I'm not going to ever stick up for Deontay Johnson. If after this season was over, they parted ways, I'm cool with it. I get tired of watching Deontay Johnson. He is horrible.
I agree with you
And they
100%.
paid him way too much money 2 years ago.
Yeah.
He was coming off of 100 and some catch season. Let me tell you what 99 catches were. They were within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage on crossing patterns from Ben Roethlisberger, who didn't throw the ball downfield, I bet you, more than 20 times an entire season. It's not easy to get 100 catches when you're running those kind of routes all the time and picking up. His probably per catch that year was 4.5. So they paid him based on a 100-catch season that really he's not taking the top off the defense. He's not going over the middle to make them tough catches. He's not that guy.
And you just watch him. If he doesn't catch the ball, he looks at the referees. Hey, it's interference, and there's nobody near him.
Yeah, that's
That's what blows my mind on him.
Absolutely.
okay. Hey, I'm gonna throw some coaches' names out here, and you guys give me where you think they may go. If you don't have an idea, just say pass. Harbaugh from Michigan.
I say
Washington Commanders.
I'm going to say Harbaugh either ends up in Las Vegas or with the Chargers.
Okay, now. Okay, Tomlin. We already discussed that. It'll be on Vrabel.
New England.
New England.
Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy.
Let's put it this way. Is Tomlin will retire? Let's bring him to Pittsburgh.
I think
Do you
Bieniemy's
think, do you think our team can handle him?
I think
Because they don't like being bothered.
Bieniemy's going to be an offensive coordinator again next year. I don't think he's going to be a head coach anymore.
Okay. Do you see him going? All right, coordinator. Do you see him going back to Kansas City?
Yeah.
Do you?
No.
Yeah.
Where do you think, Bart? Where do you think he goes?
I'm looking for him to go to Jacksonville.
That's a different one. All right. How about Mike McDonald, Baltimore's defensive coordinator? There's a lot of talk about him.
I'm going to pass on that one. I don't know that much about Mike McDonald, to be honest with you.
I'd look for him to go to the Raiders.
The Raiders?
Yes.
I could see that, too. I could see that. Dan Quinn, Dallas, defensive coordinator. There are some teams that already want him. They've already talked about talking to him.
Oh, boy.
Tennessee.
Hey, I got a question for you, since we're on this Dallas coach. If the Cowboys don't perform in these playoffs, do they get rid of that coach, or do they bring him?
Boy, you got to think McCarthy's got to be getting close to being on thin ice. I think that they got a legit shot this year. They're going to get to play. They're going to get to play 2 home games before they got to go to San Francisco.
Yeah.
And we all know the difference between them being at home on the road. We've all seen the stats. We know what kind of team they are. And to me, they're going to have a little bit of a cakewalk to that San Francisco game. To me, they're going to just hammer Green Bay this weekend. I don't even think that's going to get – I can't believe that game's only 7.5 points. But, boy, if McCarthy goes to San Francisco and loses – boy, you could see Jerry Jones coming out of his shoes and saying, you know what, we got to get somebody here to get us over the hump. Because,
or do they already have Dan Quinn there? That's kind of why I was going with that, because I could see Jerry Jones getting hair up his ass and saying, you know what, you're done. McCarthy, you're out of here. Dan, you're in. You know, I could see that. Ben Johnson, Detroit offensive coordinator. A lot of smoke about him. A lot of smoke.
Well, if you gotta, I think the next guy that takes over in Carolina has got to be an offensive-minded dude. I don't know much about Ben Johnson, his history as far as developing quarterbacks, I mean, they have their number one pick in place in Bryce Young in Carolina. Maybe if he's a guy that it can develop a quarterback, but I don't know if Carolina. I think Carolina's got way more problems than just developing an offense. I think they're a long ways away from being competitive in there. So who knows what they do in Carolina? I don't know how much draft capital they have. I mean, Carolina gave up their pick to get Young last year, and they traded away their best receiver. So I mean, it's not a very attractive job for. I don't think it's an attractive job for anybody. Me personally, I can't believe they didn't give Reich one more year with Young. I mean, Young spent most of the year hurt. I think Young is a guy that can develop young quarterbacks, but obviously they got fed up with what he was doing there, and so I don't know.
All right. Pete Carroll, where's he go from now?
Pete Carroll's staying with Seattle. He's going to be an advisor with them.
Okay.
He's not going anywhere. He's going to be he's staying on with Seattle as an advisor, and that's going to be his next career. So he's not going to be a head coach anywhere next year.
Yeah. Bart, you got any other questions, buddy?
We're talking about changing head coaches. How about changing quarterbacks? Because you got a lot of quarterbacks coming out, and there's like 3 or 4 quarterbacks got hurt that when they come back, their quarterbacks this year will probably be going. Because, you have the Colts quarterback. I would say he showed himself.
Oh, Anthony Richardson, absolutely.
So, where's he going to go?
I think he stays right where he's at.
Oh, yeah. Richard's going to end up, he's going to stay there. The thing that every year we get into this draft thing and we talk about quarterbacks and these first-round guys, and, there's always – you get guys like Purdy and guys like that you get them later in those middle rounds, and just because a guy's dynamic in college, I don't think it always translates to the NFL. I see a guy like Caleb Williams that he's got size, he's got the arm strength and that, but I think there's so much more to it when you get to the next level. And we see this with these younger guys. Some of them struggle with, one, the speed of the game. I mean, it's one thing playing in college where, they're good athletes and everything, but when you play on Sundays, everybody on the field was the best player on their college team. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So every level you jump, the athletes get better. And it's one thing for a guy like Caleb Williams to go into the Pac-12 and dominate and put up lots of points. You look at what Caleb Young did outside of the Pac-12 against like Notre Dame and some of these other schools. He struggled. When teams actually lined up against him and played some sort of defense, he didn't have a great season, and they struggled down the stretch. So I don't think that just because you're a first-round pick, that guarantees you success in the NFL. Like, I'll use Drake May as an example. Everybody, Drake May this, Drake May that. I watched him play at least 3 or 4 times this year. I don't get Drake May. I don't. I saw him the last game of the season when they played Clemson. I expected him to come out there and him to light it up. He looked horrible against Clemson. Now, was Clemson superior on defense? Maybe. But Clemson was a mediocre team at best all season. And you think a guy like Drake May would be able to go out and make some plays. He made one good throw in that game. So, yeah, maybe Drake May's talented and maybe he is a good pocket passer and maybe he can read a defense. But I think it's a pig in the poke, man. I really do. These guys put their eggs in these baskets where we're going to guarantee our franchise on this first pick. And I think more times than not, it just doesn't pan out.
I just see only like 2 first-round quarterbacks to go. Receiver's a different story, but lineman's a big thing. I think the lineman's going to go big time.
There's a lot of them out there.
Right. And me and Ron talked about this earlier in the season, and my big opinion on offensive linemen is is these guys, I think over the next 10, 15 years, you're going to see these offensive linemen, not to stereotype what an offensive lineman looks like, but these big and movable objects that really kind of have their feet in cement. I think you're going to see these guys become a little bit more mobile, a little bit quicker, a little bit faster. Because in my mind right now, these edge rushers and these defensive linemen are just way better athletes than what these guys are on the offensive line. And week in and week out, you're seeing these guys get used. And if there's one position that I could see changing over the next 5 to 10 years, it's what the idea of an offensive lineman looks like. I think you're going to see a transition from these 300-pound guys that are just there to grade roads into guys that are fleet of foot. They're a little bit faster, quicker, more athletic. I think they have to be in order to be able to compete against these defensive guys, because right now they're getting outclassed most weeks. And I think we all can agree that a football team's only as good as what their offensive line is on offense. If you can't block guys, if you can't open up holes, I don't give a shit if you got Roger Staubach at quarterback, or you got Randy Moss at wide receiver, or you got Tony Dorsett running the football. If you don't got 5 guys up front with an attitude that can block, and you ain't going to do shit. And to me, offensive line is the most I don't think it's underrated, but I don't think it's talked about enough.
Correct.
I think guys I think in the NFL, I think they know how important it is. I just don't think the pipeline from college to the NFL is what it should be. I don't think that's why you only hear about 1 or 2 of these offensive linemen a year in the draft, when you should be hearing about a lot more offensive linemen in the draft, in my opinion.
Yeah, in past years, you haven't seen that rich of talent for the offensive line. I totally get that. Now, this year, it's different. There is a lot of offensive tackles in the first 2 rounds, I mean abundantly, that we haven't seen in years. And if a team like Pittsburgh, who desperately needs offensive linemen, does not pull 2 out of 3, they're making a big mistake.
Yeah.
Now's the time. It's just like pick your shot. This is the year. I think we mess up every year on drafts. Every year we mess up. I think the time we got Pickett, and that might not be his fault because of Ben extending, but if we would have picked a quarterback a year before or a year after Pickett, we would have been in much better shape. There would not even be a question of what's going on.
You're probably right.
Lineman, go ahead.
And I think you could have got Pickett later last year. I don't think you had to take Pickett with that pick overall. I think you could have waited. And even if maybe you had to trade a pick to get him later in the first round, I think you could have done that. But I'm with you, Ron. I think the first round pick could have been better last year. That would have put us in a better spot.
Well, like you and me talked before, Ron, if we would have pulled off and got Baltimore's center, how great that would have been.
Tyler Lindenbaum. Now, there's a guy that Baltimore does not have to worry. He comes in as a rookie. He's a Pro Bowl center. He's a Pro Bowler this year. He'll be a Pro Bowler every year he plays. You don't have to worry about the middle of your field. You're set for years, 9, 10 years. That we could have had him. We could have had him. And
I'd love to see us get a center in the first round, a top-notch center.
Yeah, because I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting tired of watching our guy roll it back to our quarterback
right
3 times a game.
Right.
Playing freaking bocce ball.
Yeah, I'm going to go real quick. One thing about that draft, Rob, I think you and I are on the same. Out of those 3 quarterbacks, I personally like Quinn Ewers of Texas the best out of those 3.
Yeah.
Williams, May, Drake, and Quinn Ewers. I think Quinn's the best transitional quarterback in the pros.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think he is too. I'm going to throw a guy into that mix. The only thing that worries me about this guy is his size a little bit, because he is on the smaller side. but I think this dude's a playmaker and throws him just an incredible deep ball, is Jaden Daniels from LSU. And I think this guy is going to be a playmaker at the next level. If he's put in the right situation and they don't try to make him something he's not. Another guy that I just love watching throw the football is another guy that can get the ball down the field is Penix. I think he seems to be he's a guy that's a 5-year guy. He's been around there. I think he's smart. I think he can throw. He's a guy to me that I could see making the next level. But to me, the biggest playmaker out of that group, just not with legs, but his ability to throw the football is Jaden Daniels. And I just had this talk with my girlfriend's kid the other day. If LSU would have had any kind of defense this year, you wouldn't be talking about Michigan or Washington. LSU would have been a national title winner. They would have walked through dudes, but the only problem is they couldn't stop anybody. They were getting beat 50-something to 50-something on a week basis. If they could have just played a little bit of defense, LSU probably wins the SEC and they probably walk through the playoffs. That's how talented Jaden Daniels' numbers were better than oh my goodness. He hasn't played for so long, I forgot his name, the guy in Cincinnati. Quarterback, Cincinnati. You know who I'm talking about. Anyhow, his numbers were better than his at LSU his senior year. And so to me, Jaden Daniels is a guy that I think is going to be the one to watch on that draft list coming out.
It's funny, Pickett didn't get picked. When did we pick him? Like 20th? It was later, right, in the first round.
Who's that?
Pickett, when Pittsburgh went for Pickett.
It was. I think we had like the 14th or 15th pick last year. We didn't miss the playoffs.
So that was the year before that. Last year
yeah, maybe it was 20th.
It was like a 20th pick. But this year, you got 5 quarterbacks that are predicted to go in the first 25 or 23 picks, and 4 of them are right up towards the top, and then you got that one that's hanging in the back here. But I don't know. That makes a difference. That does make a difference of and it's funny how that works. Now, there isn't like abundance of receivers coming out, like Bart disclosed. A lot of receivers coming out, a lot of offensive linemen. I would like to see Pittsburgh commit to drafting an offensive lineman in the first 3 rounds every year, no matter what. Period.
Yeah,
I think it's one in the trenches. I'm a believer. You can have all the skilled positions on the outside, behind you, whatever. If you don't have it covered in the trenches, both sides of the ball, you're behind the 8 ball.
Joe Burrow, by the way.
Joe Burrow. I thought you were talking old-time Cincinnati.
No. I can't believe I just went brain dead there and couldn't remember Joe Burrow's name for crying out loud.
God, he gets hurt for 1 year and we forget about
him. Yeah, he is a forgettable guy.
I have a question for Bart. What's the problem of college that you don't see the big name running backs like you used to? You might get 1 or 2, but usually back in the days, running backs were, but this last couple of years, there's nothing there.
Well, I just think it's how the game's changed. I don't think that the running back positions is as important as it used to be. Like when we were all growing up, when we first started playing fantasy football, I can remember you would sit there and the running backs were the first guys off the board because you wanted a dude that was getting the ball 30 times a game and they were throwing on 3rd down and that was about it. Well, then, of course, our good friend Bill Walsh comes around and he changes everything with his West Coast offense. And now it's wide receivers. If you don't get one of those top 8 guys in that first round or whatever, you're missing the boat. And then you're going – there still are some running backs out there that are game changers. But I just don't think that position's what it used to be. And I think it's going to continue to be that way where I think these teams with cap room and cap money are looking at, well, there's not a huge separation between a guy like Derrick Henry and a guy like Jaylen Warren. Henry might be the bigger name, but if you look production-wise, I can get this guy that does the same job for a lot less money, and I can put that money into somewhere else. And as long as I got an offensive line that's blocking, I think I can plug Joe Schmo in at running back, and he's still going to do the same type of thing. Now, you always going to have a handful of guys that have better vision, maybe are a little bit faster, blah blah blah. But I think that running back position in the NFL has become so the same across the board that I just don't think you have that need for like a Dorsett, like Franco Harris and O.J. Simpson. I mean, you can get on the list and name these guys that have put teams on their backs and carried them for 10 years.
I think that those days the running backs took care of the middle, but now it seems like the tight ends and the guys going across the middle is making that move. That's why the running backs are not there.
No, I mean the days of 3 yards in a cloud of dust and let's throw it on third down. Those days are for the most part over. I mean, I still think you're going to have teams that are going to have a little success like that. Like I said, thank God that's the way we're sort of playing right now because I think it's been successful for us. If you were asking me to give you an MVP on the Steeler team this year, it would be Warren and Najee. And the offensive line, the second part of the season, I think they have made strides, and but us being able to run the football is what's gonna win us a playoff game on Sunday. And then if you can bring them safeties up and Rudolph can make a couple throws downfield, I think that's the key to Pittsburgh winning is them running the ball and playing defense. I still think that wins you games in December and January.
I think you said
they're going to go away.
I think you said a lot there. I mean, and that is truth. Back in the day, running backs were running 30 plus times a game. Now it's like they want to keep them as close to 20 and don't go over.
Yeah.
You know, they want to save their legs. It's like 20 is that number now. It's 20 carries a game. That's where it's at.
Well, Ron, when you were a kid, name me any time where you had a tandem of running backs. I mean, when you were putting together your top sticker book album, there weren't two running backs on that page. There was one running back. That was your guy. Yeah. I mean, now every team's got a stable of two or three guys. One can catch the ball, one can pass block, and one can run. I mean, there's three backs on every team, and they all have a different skill set.
Right.
And back then, there were very few guys that caught passes out of the backfield other than a token screen every once in a while. But now you got guys that play running back that line up in the slot or line out wide. I mean, I would still like that. I'd love to have a guy like Le'Veon Bell back. I mean, not only could Bell line up and run the ball down your throat in the middle, but he could line up at wide receiver and make catches with the best of them.
Right.
And so, I mean, I think that position's got to be versatile. I think they got to be, if you're going to be a good three down back, you got to be able to do it all. And I think right now Pittsburgh's got the best of both worlds. They got Najee, who can just pound middle, and he's not an easy guy to and he's not an easy guy to tackle. On top of that, he can catch the ball out of the backfield. And then you get Warren, who can also catch the ball out of the backfield, and he's got the speed to get to the outside. So I think this tandem that they got going right now is working out great for them. Now, it pissed me off in the Baltimore game a couple times when they tried to run Najee outside. That's not that dude's game. And Najee's not an outside guy. You need to pound him in the tackles, run your trap plays, let him hit the hole. And if he gets to that second level, God bless you, because he's not easy to bring down, man. Those defensive linemen got to get to him quick, because if he gets to the linebacker and the safety, he's ripping off 7-8 yard carries. He's tough.
Yeah, I'm still on the history. You got me thinking about the history of the running backs. I mean, back in the day, it was one running back, and that's why it was so huge when Pittsburgh had Franco Harris and Rocky Bleier both bang 1,000 yards that year. That was huge for the whole NFL when they did that, because that was just not the norm.
No, it wasn't. It definitely wasn't the norm. It wasn't. But I mean, we were back then. I mean, that freaking offensive line back there, I could have probably got 500 yards behind those.
Yeah.
I'm a fat weight guy that, Christ Almighty, I get a cramp running to the fridge to grab a beer.
Okay. Hey, any predictions on the games?
Yeah, I'm going to run down my list here. I think Cleveland handles Houston. KC at home in -5 degree weather against Miami, easy pickings. Um, I'm going to take Pittsburgh in the upset. I think it's not going to be an easy game, but just something in my heart tells me that we're going to win a playoff game. I don't know what it is, but I see us beating Buffalo. Dallas that's a gimme game against Green Bay. Philly's a gimme game against Tampa. Probably the best game of the week is the Rams Detroit. And I unfortunately for the Detroit fans and fan base, I just think the Rams are going to come out of there with a win on Sunday night. So those are my picks for the playoffs.
That Lions Rams, they both have great passing games, but poor pass defense. So there's a game right there where you could just definitely see.
Oh, I'm taking Detroit.
Believe me, Bart. I would like to see Detroit win. I just I just think with McVay and Stafford and the offense that the Rams have. I mean, and
I think
they are
Detroit
playing.
got a way better running game.
Who's that?
Detroit got a better running game.
Yeah,
and I think, I'm the old school.
I agree. I agree they got a good running game, but boy, I'll tell you what though, if you look back, they disappear in some football games every once in a while. Detroit has I don't want to say they've been inconsistent, but there are times where Detroit's not what you think they are, and I think this is going to be one of them weeks. So,
right. Well, on that note, I want to appreciate everybody listening. I want to thank Bart. I want to thank Rob, guys, for great conversation. Looking forward to this game. I know that this week's going to be interesting, and I agree with you, Rob, on all your things, though. But thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Ron. It was nice talking to you guys.
And I want to thank everybody for following us, subscribing, liking, hit the notifications. You hit the notifications, you'll see when we go live like this. I appreciate it. And please share it with your friends. Thank you very much. Have a great day.